Okay, so I've taken the entire week off this week, now that tax season is wrapped up, to do a brand new round of benchmarks for the entire suite of GPUs that have released this generation. Excepting, of course, the RTX 5090, which is next to impossible to lay hands on unless you've got $3,000 or more. And I'm sorry, guys, it's not in my review budget. But that does mean that I've been able to do a brand new round of benchmarks for the RTX 5080, 5070 Ti, 5070, 5060 Ti, the AMD RX 9070 XT, and non-XT variant. So it has been a slog getting here, but we are here finally on Thursday recording, and I'm so excited to get these recordings up and edited and out to you. Like, there are so many reviews that I know that are late to the party ones, and I do apologize for that. This is just the first opportunity that I really had with tax season being as busy as it was to give these cards their due. So yeah, like when I finally sat down to start recording, like I was immediately up against a wall. Like I had no idea. I was just beset by frustration and indecision and hesitation. Like I didn't know where to go because it was just so much data. So like I had to like step away and think about it. And I was reminded of something that my mom used to say to me in high school when I was a terrible procrastinator, which is swallow your frog first and the rest of the day is easy. Swallow your frog means do the one task that is going to be looming over your head that you're just going to dread all day long because you don't want to do it because it's either stupid or superfluous or just like tedious or difficult or challenging. Just like you don't want to do it. Just do it first, and then the rest of the day is peaches. So with that, I took it to heart and I took it to mind, and so we're going to start things off with the 5060 Ti. Now, this was difficult for me because I was really looking forward to seeing how it performed. The 60 Ti class of cards usually is just like a sweet spot for 1440p gaming when you're not paying 1440p prices. Now, of course, NVIDIA fixed that for us with the 4060 Ti coming in at $500 MSRP for the 16GB variant, but they scaled it back this generation to $429. Now, on launch day, Zotac fixed that for me because this was the only card I was able to get at launch day, and it came at $499. This is the Zotac AMP. There is no extreme. If you want an AMP extreme, it's got to be 5070 or higher. I can tell you confidently there's nothing extreme about the 5060 Ti. Just overall hardware specifications of the 5060 Ti, we're looking at 4,608 CUDA cores, 48 ROPs, assuming you get them all, 16 gigabytes of GDDR7 on a 128-bit bus. Now, the only thing that really differentiates this card, other than its shroud, from the reference card, or I guess the Founders Edition 4060 Ti or 5060 Ti, is this has a slightly higher boost clock. So boost clock on the reference is 2572, boost clock on this is 2632. So a whopping 2.3% increase there. Dimensions, we're looking at 8.7 inches long by 4.7 inches tall by 1.6 inches thick. So this can be a good small form factor GPU. Like it'll fit in there really, really nice. And for those of you who are only interested in a small form factor GPU review for its temperatures, we'll just get it out of the way. At steady state, it's 72 degrees Celsius under load. Gaming and rendering and running, Premiere Pro, 72 is where it reaches that nice normalized threshold. 72 degrees Celsius. This graphics card right here, which is the Zotac AMP 5060 Ti, under load, 72 degrees Celsius. Cool. All right, so as far as ports, we're looking at 3 DisplayPort 2.1Bs and 1 HDMI 2.1B. It's just standard fare. I have a lot of thoughts that I want to get into it. This is the last card that I benchmarked from the 5000 series, and driver issues and hardware issues, like in my previous reviews, I've kind of just left them alone. I wanted to let NVIDIA cook, I wanted them, I was going to afford them the same graces that I afford every other like AMD or Intel when they very first launched. Like sometimes we get a rough launch, but here we are months, and I mean months after launch. So I've got some thoughts, but TLDW, the review is going to be short because there's really not much. Like we've got a handful of games that we're gonna talk about here. But yeah, to sum everything up, in the immortal words of Bernard Black, it's dreadful, but it's quite short. Okay, so before we dive into the benchmarks, system specifications are going to be in the description, but real quick refresher here, running a Ryzen 7 9800X3D on a Gigabyte AORUS Elite Ice X870 motherboard. We've got 64 gigabytes of Patriot Viper running at 6,000 mega transfers, and then all games and benchmarks are installed on the same SSD. It's a Kingston Fury Renegade 4 terabytes Gen 4 M.2. So a couple quick notes here. Unfortunately, I was going to have this feature contain stock numbers against overclocked numbers because that's kind of what Blackwell had going for it. But unfortunately, at time of recording, overclocking manually still leads to downclocking and just a vast increase in black screen crashes. It was an exercise in frustration. I had to walk away. Unfortunately, it's just going to be stock numbers. Now, for in-game numbers, I went with only titles that have released this year. Most of my GPU reviews are going to be late to the party ones, and everybody has seen how this particular card handles games like Alan Wake 2 or Cyberpunk 2077 or Black Myth Wukong. So the only thing that I could do that would set myself apart here, being late to the party, is having access to these brand new titles as they release. So, and to see how this card performs against those titles. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. I hope it's something that you guys enjoy. If you want to see the older titles, drop a comment below, let me know. Firestrike Extreme is where we'll kick things off. DirectX 11, 1440p. We see less and less of that particular recipe for games, but a good healthy score of 19,812. Time Spy is DirectX 12 at 1440p, and we've got 16,146. So good serviceable scores for both of those. Once we get into Port Royal, it's a little bit lower than I would like for a Blackwell card for the ray tracing benchmark here, but 10,386 is serviceable. Where things kind of get disappointing for me are titles like Speedway, which is DirectX 12 Ultimate, which includes ray tracing. And once we get into the 5070 versus 9070, you'll see just much higher numbers there. Steel Nomad, another disappointing score. We've got 3,664. Benchmarks don't really mean much. Not too many people are chasing these numbers. So let's go ahead and get into game, and we're going to kick things off with Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, quick note here, if ray tracing is enableable in any of these titles, it is enabled to its maximum extent. I feel like if ray tracing is going to start being baked into games, and it is now the industry standard to have them, it makes no sense to have like separate benchmarks for how a game will perform with it on and off if it's just going to be like that's the standard. So let's just push these cards with it on as part of like its default situation. So 1080p disappointing numbers. We got 50.4, 1080p 43.2, at least the 1% lows are kind of tidy there. 1440p we dropped down to 40 frames per second and 34.7 in the 1% lows. Not a great start. Let's hope things turn around in Oblivion. What? Elder Scrolls 4, this is the remaster. It is not the original that I fell in love with 19 years ago. So don't let the 1% lows like get you down. It's more about the title than it is the 5060 Ti. Every card I benchmarked has had low 1% lows. 74.9 1080p is not bad. It's where I take issues 1440p. So I even gave it the benefit of the doubt using software Lumen rather than the hardware to like give it the best leg up I could. But 53.9 and 1.7 at 1440p is just, it's kind of a disappointing score, honestly, for a $500 graphics card when $50 more will get you much, much better performance out of either the 9070 or the 5070. Moving on over to Atomfall, we see a jump in performance. This is a very well optimized title. It is a beauty, just like it is a passion project. It's a shorter game. You can pick it up on Game Pass if you want to give it a go. It's also relatively inexpensive, but if you like open world survival, this is a great, great title. It gave me kind of like New Vegas vibes here and there, and characters are memorable. It's not a review of the game. I just really enjoyed it, but great performance out of the 5060 Ti, 178.6 at 1080p, 132.5 in the 1% lows. The 1080p 1% lows on average, I feel like are a lot looser than they ought to be, especially compared to the 1440p. So we go down to 118.1 overall, but 90.9 is a much more tight 1% low there. But yeah, I mean, either way, like both resolutions were a treat to play this title at. Moving on over to another lesser known but really, really like beautiful game that I enjoyed, South of Midnight, 1080p 119.9, and then yeah, like 69.7 1% lows. They should be better than that. 1440p we're at 85.5 and 52.1 in the 1% lows. This is another Game Pass gem. Like if you've not given it a go and like you enjoy more of that like Southern folklore, I really loved it. It was a short game about, I think 13 hours I threw into it and I was done with it. But yeah, give it a go if you have Game Pass or you got like 35 extra bucks. Really, really good game. Let's head on over to Monster Hunter Wilds, one that really doesn't need an introduction. 71.1, or sorry, 71.7 in the 71.7 in the averages at 1080p, and 45.2 in the 1% lows. 1440p, 54.5. Averages 35.1. Yet another title where I feel like we should be at 60 or higher for $500. We just should be at 1440p. But maybe that's not where the industry's going. Who knows? We'll see once the 9060 XT drops. Let's head on over to Kingdom Come Deliverance, another disappointment at 1440p, 73.7, 1080p, 54.6. That's a great result on this title. This is a beautiful, beautiful game. Low distances can kind of play heck with them, but yeah, 54.9 at 1440p and 43.3. Just, I was hoping for more. Honestly, especially when I looked over my numbers from the B580 review, I'm almost kicking myself for not comparing it to this card, but I was going to wait until the 9060 and the 5060 non-TI, non-XT, and like have like the entry level like showdown, and that's where we'll see those comparatives there. But let's go on over to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is a title that performs really, really good in 141.1, but yet again we see those awkwardly low 1% lows at 82.2. You could probably attribute those to transition scenes like we have, but like the cinematics between these fights, you will see like unexpectedly low 1% lows, and then 1440p 94.3 and 44.1. So great numbers. Credit where it's due. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth does very well on this card at those two resolutions. Let's go on over to first Berserker Khazan, which is another very well optimized title. It just recently had a patch, and yeah, numbers shoot way up across the board for it. So 192.1 at 1080p, but 92 frames lost for 1% lows, 100 flat there at 1080p 1%. 1440p 121.4, great numbers, and 87.9 in the 1% lows. This is a great game. If you like a Souls-like, if you like more Sekiro style combat, like I fell in love with it. It was my gaming life for about 3 solid weeks until I was done with it. So yeah, give it a go if you like the Souls-like. Head on over finally to our last title, but honestly our most disappointing result here. 1080p, we've got 63.2 in Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And I know that there's no E in Obscur. Sorry, I forgot to remove that one. So it's Clair Obscur with no E, and then the E should go over to Expedition 33. 63.2 at 1080p, 51.5 in the 1% lows, but the 1440p, 41.1 is it's disappointing. And then 34.3 in the 1% lows. So not great numbers across the board for these brand new titles. It speaks to an issue that I've been experiencing with the 50 series. Is just game ready drivers have not been game ready. And like I have my whole thoughts as we'll get into, like power draw and thermals, like it's a very performant. I didn't have a separate slide for it because like I just wanted to say it's 72 degrees. 72 degrees is what this thing runs at when it's under load really consistently. It's not like Zotac recommends a 600 watt PSU for it. So there you go. Yeah, sorry. It got to a point, and I hate that. I need to work on it as far as like my own independent professionalism. I just could not wait to get this card out of my rig and get back into an AMD card because it was such a bad experience for me. I had so many crashes, but yeah, we'll talk about that in my final thoughts. But yeah, numbers, they could definitely be better. I'm gonna test it across a more broad spectrum suite. Some of the older titles, maybe things are performing better there, but it's just I expected better from these brand new titles that just released this year that are very good titles that a lot of people are playing. I hope NVIDIA is taking notes and are gonna just do better with their driver. So with that in mind, these are the numbers. Let's just dive on into my final thoughts and close out this review. Okay, so wrapping things up, final thoughts. I promise I'm going to try to be concise. I'm going to try not to ride the tangent train too often here, but I do feel like it's important, it's imperative that I give you an adequate and accurate depiction of what my experience was with the 5060 Ti, as well as the 5000 series launch as a whole. Now, I know the 5060 is still forthcoming, and I know just given how milquetoast Clark Kent this whole 5000 series has been in terms of performance, like we're going to be seeing the supers here sooner than later, but that's a bridge we'll cross when we get there. We'll start off with price. This is $499. I just checked Zotac store webpage. It's still $499, but it is sold out, so you can't get it at that price. The only 5060 Ti I was able to find at time of recording was an Asus Prime on Newegg for $529. That is $100 over MSRP, and that's $20 shy of both the 9070 and 5070's MSRP, both of which are vastly superior GPUs to this in every use case. Like, even if you want to eat 4 gigabytes of VRAM to move into the 5070, it is still just the best decision you could make, because this is not a high caliber GPU. I can understand why supply is low for this GPU. I can understand why they kept the 8 gigabyte out of the hands of reviewers, because this is not a card I would be proud of. I am disappointed in this card. I will just level with you in terms of whether or not you should buy it at its price point, unless, here's the use case. If you need a GPU today and you only have, we'll say, $530, and no other GPU, previous generation or secondhand market, will tide you over, in that case, in that box, in that four-walled world, this card is serviceable. That's it. And I realize that I'm coming off a little heated here, but let me justify that with some driver experience. Okay, so this was benched on 576.28, which just released a couple of days ago. I'm still getting black screen crashes benchmarking on this. Games and certain applications coming out of sleep to a black screen, it's simply like my monitor would not recognize it. I moved monitors, I moved cables, both HDMI and DisplayPort. I moved this whole GPU into my recording rig, wherein I ran DDU and then I ran a full install of Windows, and it still occurred. And I wanted to have good, stable, overclocked numbers for this review, but I couldn't get it because in certain use cases, certain games, it would still downclock. It would still downclock. This is an issue that was identified months ago, or at least a month ago. And so the thing to keep in mind here, and like I realize that it's just like a lot of blah, because like these cards released, not the 5060 Ti, but the 5000 series launched January 30th. It is now May 1st. You've had 3 months and change to get your driver poop in a group, and your shit is still not wired tight. It is still all over the place. And I have to tell you confidently, when I moved over from the 5070 Ti to the 9070 XT, settling into those Adrenalin drivers was like the comfiest, coziest, warm chair where games just worked. And that's been NVIDIA's like crown jewel, is that their drivers just work. They are game ready drivers at launch, and these drivers are anything but game ready. I know that FSR 4 was like a really small rollout initially, but they, like, as games launch, like if it's a big title like Oblivion, day after launch, they had FSR 4 support for it. So like, I'm not trying to cheerlead for AMD. I just had such a negative experience with the 5000 series. I personally got a card that was missing ROPS of 5080. I had to send it back. And like in the time that it took for it to get there and get back, I already had the 5070 Ti, the 5070, and then like these cards, the 29070s, the 9070 and 9070 XT. There was just so much to do. And like, it's still sitting. Like I tried overclocking it before I threw this one in, and it still wasn't doing it like consistently. So I took it out. I'm kind of sick with it. I don't know what to do. Like I'm probably like, it's too late to return it, but I just can't sit on $1,200 that I spent, which brings me to my final point, and the one that kind of just like frustrates me the most is, so in order for me to get these cards, I don't get review samples. I purchase them. And like that's the investment that I'm willing to make for the channel, because I want to grow it and I want to do reviews. Like, this is something that I have so much fun doing. I know it sounds like it now. So I called it a labor of love, because I would have to be there on launch day, the morning of launch day, if I had any hopes of obtaining one of these at around MSRP or just at all. So like I was there bright and early the day that the 5080 reviewed, or the 5080 dropped. I was there bright and early the day the 5070 dropped. I was by every step of the way. I've had to fight. I've had to be in like Discord forums. I've got applications on my phone that send me text messages when these cards come in stock. Like, you've had to, if you wanted one of these GPUs, you had to fight to get them, and then you have to fight to overpay for them so that they can underperform. Like that's like if I were to sum the 5000 series experience up in a sentence is you will have to fight to overpay for a card that underperforms. Their new slogan should be the more you buy, the less they perform. This is a very, very like 10th, 11th generation Intel feeling that I'm getting where it's just gamers, GeForce is just an afterthought. It's a phoned in generation. And I will tell you to like wrap things up here. My plan for this review cycle was I was going to buy these cards as I could and then sell them when I was done reviewing them and like save the money. And when I completely gone through the stack, 5080 all the way down to 5060, 9070, 9070 XT, and like whatever else that they send out, like once all of those were done, I was going to reward myself with a 5090 to ride out this generation. A pat on the back because I really you know, this is something that was important to me. And this is something that actually took a good amount of like personal sacrifice from my family. And like, I'm grateful to them for that, but that's not what this is ultimately about. Anyway, I'm not going to get a 5090. I'm not going to give NVIDIA my +1 to market share after what they rolled out. This is the most phoned in, like haphazardly released, just like one of these to the gamer base I have ever experienced. And it's just like I don't have the words. It's so disappointing. It's so disappointing. And yeah. So like I've already bought the GPU that's going to be my GPU for the rest of the generation, and that's the Sapphire Nitro Plus 9070 XT. Unless AMD rolls out like a 9080 XT or 9070 XTX, like I'm not giving NVIDIA my business or my +1 to market share this generation. I just know. And I'm not telling you what to do with your money. I'm telling you like reviewer portion ends here, consumer portion starts here. I'm not gonna buy NVIDIA for this generation. Like if there's a super card that comes out that I have to review, then I'll do that. But like I'm not going to rep NVIDIA this generation. It's yeah, like we've been redshirting for a company that just like we're not their focal point, and we haven't been their focal point for 3 generations now. And so it's important. Like I said, you can do whatever you want with your money. NVIDIA will probably bounce back from this, but I just remember it. Like make sure that they remember it too. Those are my thoughts on this. The 5060 Ti is a serviceable GPU under a very, very specific use case, but otherwise I would stay away from it. It's not a good performer. It's if you can save an extra $100, you can step into a much better performer that is cooler. That is like the cooler on this was fine. It was a quiet GPU. I like the aesthetics. I like the color scheme. I've got the solid OC in my recording rig right now because I like the way it looks. But it's a disappointing GPU. It's a disappointing generation of GPUs. Those are my thoughts. I'm sorry to end on a downer. I promise my next review is going to be a lot more upbeat. But yeah, that's where I land on it. I hope even if it wasn't like a super duper upbeat review, but we swallowed our frog, and I hope you got something from it. If you did, please feel free to leave a like on the video, subscribe to my channel. Like I said, I really want to get to 1,000 subscribers, so I'm really going to be pushing the content out now that tax season's over. So you guys are an incredible community. I really, really do love you. Thank you for all of the interactions, the support, everything. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I'll see you in the next one.